Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Kat. For today's video, I will be doing a reading wrap up for the last 3 months, which is January, February, and March. In total, I read about 9 books, so let's get right into it. The first book that I finished this year is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I gave this book a 4.0 star rating. This book is about Casey, who is a former actress, and she moves back into her family house. Across the lake is a couple that she becomes very interested in, to the point where she spies on them, and they have a seemingly good life until one day the wife disappears and she starts suspecting that it may be the husband who's behind her disappearance. I think this is my 4th Riley Sager book I read. In general, I do enjoy every single Riley Sager book I read. However, this one is my least favorite, and a lot of it is because the plot twist and the ending, it was just so outlandish and so ridiculous, so out of the blue. I feel like this was an experimental book for Riley Sager, for him to just try something new. In general, I did enjoy the prose and the writing of this book, as I typically do with most Riley Sager books. I think his writing style is very easy, breezy, and it sucks you in as a reader. This book, however, is a paranormal book, which again, did not expect that, because like the first 2/3 of the book was definitely like a thriller mystery. Usually with most Riley Sager books, he kind of like toes the line between reality and the paranormal. On to the characters. So Casey, as our main character, was kind of hard to read about because she's a raging alcoholic. So like the first 100 to 150 pages is literally her drinking. You get detailed descriptions of what she's drinking, how she's feeling, how she's overindulging in alcohol and whatnot, and also her constantly spying on the couple across from her house. So it was a lot of just drinking and spying going on. Riley Sager seems to have a template for his main characters. The main character usually is a female who's down on her luck or going through some struggle or some troubling situation, and usually the love interest is like a handyman or like a lawnmower or ranch hand or some man doing some sort of labor. The ending, again, was so random. I would not have guessed that the ending was what it was. Despite that, I still gave this a 4.0 star because I liked the unpredictability of it. Although I feel like there could have been a way better way to tie up the end together, I still enjoyed like the ridiculousness of it all. At that point, I was just in for the ride. Like, I didn't even care what made sense and what didn't. After that, I read Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is by Brandon Sanderson. This was one of my highly anticipated books in general, but also one by Brandon Sanderson that I had high hopes for. But unfortunately, I was not a fan. I gave it a 2.5 star rating. It just came as a shock that I didn't like this book, especially considering how many people really enjoyed this book. I did not get the same vibes, and maybe I wasn't reading it at the right time. That could be it, because it took me a whole freaking month. Guys, it took me a whole freaking month to finish this book. It's not even that long. It's like 470, so almost 500, but not quite. Yeah, like 470 something pages. So it's definitely not the longest Brandon Sanderson book, but it for some reason took me forever. And every time I tried reading it, I would get so sleepy, so I would only be able to read a few pages at a time. This book is about Tress, who is on a rescue mission to save the man she loves by traversing the seas and deadly spores with a very unlikely crew of people. Let's start with the things that I liked, which there are only 2. I liked Tress's character development. I think that she did grow a lot through this book, starting from this young, inexperienced woman to then becoming the leader of the crew that she was working for. And she's learned so many different skills from each person on the cruise ship. So that was really cool how she like grew in her abilities and her skill sets. I also loved the art in this book because I felt like it made for a very immersive reading experience. For example, this is one of the characters in the book, and it just served as like a visual aid for me while I read this book. There are a couple things, not a couple, there were a lot of things that I didn't like about this book. First and foremost, this is a first-person book from Hoid's point of view, which is a reoccurring character in a lot of Brandon Sanderson books. I feel like this could have been great as third person, and maybe I'm just used to reading his books in third person, but I didn't really vibe with the first person point of view. Also, it felt very slow for me. I guess this just wasn't the book for me, honestly, and that's okay. Not every book is gonna be for every person. It felt like a slice of life book, which I don't know if that's really my favorite type of genre, but definitely wasn't for this book. All I got was like Tress's day-to-day on the cruise ship, and at some points, actually a lot of points, I kept skimming because I really didn't care what she did in her day-to-day life. I couldn't really empathize or even care about Tress's journey, although I did appreciate again her growth. I didn't really care about the side characters or the crew members either. I did like the little rat companion that Tress had. I thought that was a very funny and fun character. I feel like if the book did not document Tress's day-to-day life on the cruise ship, I would have enjoyed it more. It would have been faster, but unfortunately it was too slow for me and I didn't like it, and this comes as a shock because I thought I would love everything Brandon Sanderson writes, but this just proves that your favorite author won't write all your favorite books. Even though I didn't enjoy it, I'm not going to not recommend this book. I think it's great if you're looking for something slower, something more whimsical, something light. This is definitely a book for you. So I'm not going to say don't read this book. It just did not end up being the book for me. And then I read Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak, and I gave this book a 3.5 star rating. This book is about Mallory, who's a former drug addict, and she is turning over a new leaf. She decides to take up a babysitting job for a couple over the summer. When she arrives there, she meets the couple's 7-year-old son, Teddy, and she also learns that Teddy draws some very disturbing pictures, and he's instructed to do so by his imaginary friend named Anya. So now Mallory is hellbent on finding out the mystery behind Anya and why Teddy is drawing these very creepy pictures. I will have to say this book did creep me out. I would refuse to read this at nighttime because it was creepy, especially the drawings that the young kid was drawing. I would show you them, but I don't want anything to be spoilery. But yeah, they were really scary to me. This is my first official foray into the horror genre. Horror is a genre that I typically don't read at all or watch because I am a scaredy cat. I get scared very, very easily. The ending did tie things together, but it did still feel underwhelming. I also did spoil a major plot twist about the book, but it didn't really matter, honestly. Like, I could have not read the plot twist and spoil it for myself and I still would have had the same feelings. The writing was good, however I do feel like there was some info dumping going on, and just generally the book was okay. I think I had higher hopes, and a lot of people kept saying that it's a very creepy book, and yes it is, because you do have Teddy's drawings in this book, and so that was creepy, and there was some creepy scenes too, but overall it just felt underwhelming, and especially when we get that plot twist about Teddy, it felt so random. I think it's a great book to read during spooky season. It will give you the creeps, but it was an okay book for me. After that, I read All Shall Mourn by Ellie Marney. I gave this book a 3.5 star rating. This is the third and final book in the All Shall Sleep trilogy. In general, this trilogy is about two characters. We have Travis and we have Emma, who are recruited by the FBI to find a teenage serial killer named Simon. I remember liking the first book. The second book kind of fell off for me, but I was still excited to get my hands on the third book and to finish this trilogy. I do still feel like this book suffers from pacing issues like the first two books did, especially the second book. It is slow. The writing is very drawn out. The author clearly did her research because she info dumps all her research into this book. She describes every little detail of this time period, and it just feels kind of unnecessary. Emma, who is the main character, she was a little less annoying in this book than the second book, and I did like Travis's character a little bit more. Simon, the teenage serial killer, was like the only interesting character across all three books. His scenes were very interesting to read. He was a very unique character, but in this book, we find out he has this relationship, physical relationship with his twin sister. It just grossed me out. In the first two books, there's always like a hint towards their possible relationship, but in the first like few pages or chapters of this book, you get a scene where they're intimate. It doesn't go into details. I just felt so grossed out by that because I'm like, why do we need that? Why do they need to have that kind of physical relationship as twin siblings? It just felt like, ugh, that's what it felt like. Ugh. The ending does kind of open up some questions and makes you ponder. However, I still end up skimming most of it because it felt very boring. The trilogy was still fun, and I do recommend it for people who love FBI cases and like Criminal Minds and like those kind of shows and stuff. So if you're into like that, if you're into anything FBI related, then you might enjoy the series. After that, I read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is book 3 in the series. I gave this book a 3.5 star rating. This third book wasn't my favorite in the series anyway, and the movie too wasn't my favorite. I wasn't surprised when I didn't have the best time. It did take me a pretty long time to read this book. I did feel like Ron and Harry were terrible friends to Hermione. I don't think they were very nice with her. I did not like how Snape bullied Harry. And I get it. We all know Snape's tragic backstory in relation to Harry's parents and whatnot. Like, we know the story, right? However, I still don't think it's fair for Snape to bully a literal child. Like, that's a child. That's a child, okay? Other than that, it was still a good book. It was a fun time, and I like the nostalgia that came with reading this book. I read Never Lie by Frida McFadden. I gave this book a 2.5 star rating. This is my first Frida McFadden book. This book is about a couple who gets stranded in a mansion that belonged to a world-renowned psychiatrist, and the main character, Trisha, finds some tape recordings between the psychiatrist and her patients. And through these tape recordings, Trisha is finding out what could have possibly happened to the psychiatrist and their disappearance. I don't think this was a good first Frida McFadden book to read for me because this book annoyed the shit out of me. The characters were adults, but it felt like I was reading about children because of the way they act and their childish behavior. The writing also felt very juvenile. It was filled with repetitions and descriptions of mundane tasks that the characters are doing. Again, did not care about the characters or even the psychiatrist whose POV we get. I just don't know how she became a psychiatrist. She's not a great psychiatrist. I don't know what a good psychiatrist is like, but not this character. I did not see the plot twist coming, but honestly, it just felt so convenient and it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I just felt like it was a very underwhelming plot twist. The plot twist actually annoyed me too. Like, everything about this book annoyed me. There were plot holes that didn't make sense. For example, the couple did not have any sort of reception, internet access, nothing out in the mansion. But somehow the husband is able to use the internet to do his work. Things like that just didn't make sense, and there were a lot of ridiculous red herrings that the author put in here. And overall, the book had potential, and I think that's why I'm so annoyed. It had potential. If only the writing was better characters, and the plot holes were taken care of. I will still give Frida McFadden another chance, because I do have another book of hers, but this wasn't a great first impression. After that, I read The Wicked King, book 2 in the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. I gave this book a 4.5 star rating. I thought this was a great continuation of the first book, Cruel Prince. I thought it built upon the first book, which was wonderful. The writing even grew on me. Jude was the highlight for me in this book. She's so badass, and I hope she gets some justice after everything she's been through. I really hope justice is coming for her in the third book, because Holly Black put our girl Jude through so much shit. I don't like Cardin's character. I didn't like him in the first book. The second book, I wasn't a fan. I think Jude deserves way better. However, towards the end, he grew on me just a tiny smidge. We'll see where he goes in the third book. I feel like this was a very, very well-paced book, very well-developed book, and I love this world that Holly Black created, and I can't wait till I read more in the third book. After that, I read The Dark Day's Deceit, which is book 3 in the Lady Helen series, and this is the end of the trilogy. I gave this book a 3.5 star rating. This whole trilogy basically is set during Victorian London. It's basically about Lady Helen, who finds out she is a demon hunter, and she joins this group of demon hunters called the Dark Days Club, and their mission is to destroy the demons and destroy the boss level demon called the Grand Deceiver. I was dreading to read this book because I did not like the second book. I absolutely did not like the second book, and I read that years ago, so you can see how long I've pushed off this third book. But I decided to finally read it so I can put an end to this whole trilogy. And to my surprise, I actually liked this third book. I had a good time. Granted, the last 200 pages were slow. I skimmed like crazy, but the first 300 pages were entertaining. They kept me on my toes. I really liked the author's writing style. However, I do feel like she does describe a little too much, but her writing and her descriptions are still so good. I had really good, clear pictures of what she was trying to describe or the emotions she was trying to make me feel. I thought the third book was better than the second book. The pacing wasn't great. Slow paced book, just like the first two. The characters were pretty good too. I really like Lady Helen because she was somebody who was a strong female protagonist, but she wasn't always very snippy and feisty all the time. Like, she didn't have to be. And then her super slow burn romance with Lord Carlston was also fun to read about. The plot was good. Again, it suffered from the pacing though. I also didn't like how Lady Helen randomly came to the right conclusions and found out the right solutions to certain problems. It just felt too convenient and unbelievable. The other thing that really annoyed me was the blatant double standard between men and women of this time. I get it. Back in the day, that's how it was, but it still infuriated me to read about it. Aside from the pacing and the structure of the book, it wasn't terrible. Happy to be done with this trilogy. And then after that, I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I gave this book a 4 star rating. This book is about Evelyn Hardcastle, who dies during the day of her celebration at her family house. And then we have Aidan Bishop, who wakes up in a different body of a different guest who was present during her murder until he is able to solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. First and foremost, this book felt so much like Black Mirror, specifically the episode White Bear. So close, so similar. But this book still held its uniqueness. What I loved about this book was the writing. The writing was so good, so well paced, so well described. I loved it so much. I think the author is an incredible writer. And again, I only read one book by him, so I have to try other books by him. But I am so willing to try other books because this writing, top notch. This book definitely played out like a locked door mystery. Think Agatha Christie or the movie Knives Out. And I felt like that made it a much more enjoyable read because I was solving this mystery along with our main character, Aidan. It's a very tightly detailed book. So you have to pay attention to everything, especially when Aidan wakes up in a different guest's body because that guest is having a different experience. There's all these little details to pick up on, but the author was able to tie it all very, very well together. Each guest's body that Aidan woke up in was a very interesting guest. Granted, there were some guests that were way worse than others, but they all helped serve a purpose for Aidan in figuring out Evelyn's murder. The way the author wrote and described each guest made it so distinguishable. So when Aidan woke up in a guest's body, the author wrote from that guest's point of view and their behavior and their thought process and the way they talked and the way they acted. It was so different per guest that each guest felt like a different character. Sometimes the characters can just kind of mush together, but the author was able to do a wonderful job in describing each of the guests differently and separately. I really appreciated that, and it made for a very interesting read. The reason I gave it 4 out of 5 stars was because the ending, although the ending made sense in terms of what the author was trying to do, it still just felt infuriating. The author, I think, was trying to pose the question, can a truly evil person, an evil person, change and become good? I don't think an evil person can become good. That's my honest thought on that. And the way the author went about answering this question didn't really resonate with me, and I think that's another reason why the ending just pissed me off. Regardless, this was a great and clever book, smartly written, and the details were meticulously placed and made for a very well tight-knit book. I really did enjoy those aspects of it, just the ending wasn't my favorite. I will definitely read more from this author. I think it's a great like lock door mystery book with a twist. There's a lot of details to pay attention to, so skimming is not going to work in this book because you have to pay attention to everything. But that was also the fun part of it. Alrighty guys, so that's all I have. If you've read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts on them. I will see you guys later. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, night, evening, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I will see you next time. Bye!